How to prevent burnout. Would you agree that the pace of life is hectic? We talk of the peak or the rush hour. How often have you heard yourself or other people say these things? If only I had the time, there's never enough time, I don't know where the time goes, but how do you find the time? I'll try and find the time. Is that the time already? My, how time flies. Could you fit in the time? I'm short of time. Mustn't waste time, must we? I just ran out of time. I don't even get time to think. And then we have all these other expressions. I haven't got a moment to spare. There are never enough hours in the day. We always seem to be on the go. There's always so much to do. I never seem to stop. We are flat out at the moment. I've just got to run. This week's simply flown. And the revealing invitation, you must come around sometime, which means don't come. You know, we think that the busier we are, the more important our lives mean. Now, if your body could talk, what would your body be saying? Perhaps it is talking in the language of protest when we refuse to cooperate with God's principles for their proper maintenance. The trouble with success is that it is the same formula for having a nervous breakdown for many people. And the commandment, Exodus 20, verse 8, says this: remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days a week are set apart for your daily duties and regular work. But the seventh day is a day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. Like all of God's 10 commandments, the Sabbath was designed not to be a burden to us, but to be a blessing. God has arranged time to unfold in 7-day periods. And the emphasis of the fourth commandment is that our work should all be done within 6 of those days. However, the work ethic of some people does little justice to the built-in human need for a balanced life. In Japan, they have a word in their vocabulary, karoshi. And the word karoshi means death from overwork. In Japan, death from overwork accounts for 11% of Japan's death rate. You almost have to process that. That's unbelievable. You see, the pace of many people's lives is killing them. And many people are burned out. And we can burn the candle at both ends and wake up and discover that we're not that bright after all. If our output exceeds our input, then our upkeep will be our downfall. That was very good. Okay, you're processing it. If our output exceeds our input, then our upkeep will be our downfall. Repeat after me. After me. If our output exceeds our input, then our upkeep will be our downfall. Too many people today have got so many irons in the fire, they've actually put the fire out. And what we need to do is to take out the irons out of the fire, stoke up the fire. If we don't live by priorities, we are going to live by pressures. And, I talk from experience, and I've learnt this. I remember there was one day I actually had a revelation. I actually had an epiphany. I went to the loo, and I flushed the loo before I started. The reason I flushed the loo before I started, which I did it automatically, and then I had to rush to pee to finish before the flush had finished so that I wouldn't have to flush it afterwards because I was in such a hurry. And it was a revelation to me. I was in the loo, I had a revelation, and I couldn't believe I was in such a hurry. The word Sabbath means cease. Cease. Jesus said in Mark 2, verse 27, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people and not people to meet the requirement of the Sabbath. Now, before I get into this, what day is the Sabbath? Okay, let's just clear this up, clarify it. The Sabbath in the Old Testament was the seventh day of the week, which is our Saturday. Now, the early Christians, they were forced to move their worship to the evening after the Sabbath and the morning of the first day of the week. But in the 3rd century, Christianity began to have a huge influence on the government of the day, and it was in AD 321 when the Emperor Constantine, he changed the constitution and he required one day off in 7 so that people could worship God and rest. The practice of resting on the first day of the week was established, and Sunday worship became the norm for Christians. Now, many people cannot avoid working on a Sunday. Doctors, nurses, the police, fire people, all sorts of people cannot avoid working on a Sunday. Are they breaking this commandment? No, because the principle is that you work 6 days out of the 7, but you keep the 7th day for worship and rest. Now, of course, if you don't have to work on a Sunday and you have the option to choose, then you shouldn't work on a Sunday, because there is great value in meeting together to worship on the same day as a practicality. But when that isn't possible and you don't have a choice, then you must still make sure one day in 7 is a day of rest and worship. So the commandment says, remember to observe the Sabbath. In other words, don't skip it and say, oh, I'll miss it this week. It's very interesting, isn't it? We've got 10 commandments. 10 commandments. With this one, we go, no, I can't keep it this week because I'm busy. I mean, how do you think my wife would feel if I said to her, "Oh, darling, do you mind if I skip the adultery one this week?" Well, I've got an opportunity. I mean, I didn't expect the opportunity, but I've got this opportunity. But Killy, if I just skip it for this week, next week I'll be faithful to you. Partial faithfulness is no faithfulness at all. Oh, this week I'm going to skip the stealing one this week. You know, can you imagine Michael Emmett going, "Oh, this week I'm just going to I'm just going to go back to a bit of stealing some good furniture." No. You can't skip it. You don't skip lying, you don't skip adultery, you don't skip stealing, you don't skip murder, you don't skip the Sabbath. There's only 10. How do we keep the Sabbath? By doing things that God intended for our benefit physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So how do we keep it? 3 principles. Principle 1, the Sabbath, a day to rest our body. Principle 1, a day to rest our body. Okay, listen to this. From the Bible, Exodus 20, verse 9. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons, your daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. You cannot make your children work on the Sabbath. You can't do it. If you're making your children work on the Sabbath, you're breaking this commandment. You can't have a cleaner on the Sabbath. It's there in the text. I haven't made it up. You see, it's there. I don't know why we pick and choose the Bible. Oh, I like this bit, I don't like that bit. Oh, no, I'm not going to keep that bit. No, it's there. There it is. God says no work. A day of physical non-productivity. I'm just going to check to see how things are going in the business. No. You do that for 6 days. You don't do it on the Sabbath. Oh, I'm just going to... No. You don't do it. You do it for 6 days, not on the Sabbath. Resting from the things we do during the week to create a day of distinction. There's a proverb, the bow that is always bent will finally cease to shoot at all. And one doctor said, the periods of rest that I prescribe to my patients are often Sabbaths in arrears. Have you noticed how children hate to go to sleep? But we know unless they get their proper rest, they aren't going to be fit to live with the next day. Now, some of you have not been taking a day off, and you're not fit to live with. A wealthy businessman was very disturbed to find a fisherman sitting beside his boat. "Why aren't you out there fishing?" he said. The man said, "Because I've caught enough fish today." The businessman said, "Well, why don't you catch more fish than you need?" The man said, "What would I do with all of those extra fish?" The businessman said, "You could earn more money and buy a better boat so that you could go deeper and catch more fish. You could purchase better nets, catch even more fish, and make more money. Soon you'd have a fleet of boats and rich like me." The fisherman said, "Then what would I do?" The businessman said, "You could sit down and enjoy life." The man said, "What do you think I'm doing now?" The Sabbath is a day to rest our body. The Sabbath is a day to rest our body. Principle 2, the Sabbath is a day to recharge our emotions. The Sabbath is a day to recharge our emotions. Chippy the budgie. Chippy the budgie never saw it coming. 1 second, he was peacefully perched in his cage, but the next second he was sucked in, washed up, and blown over. And what happened is that Chippy's owner wanted to clean the cage with the hoover. So she puts the hoover into the cage, but the phone rings, and turned around to answer the phone. As she did that, the hoover sucked in Chippy the budgie. I know, this is distressful. So she quickly switched off the hoover, opened the hoover, got the bag out, found Chippy. He is totally distressed. He is covered with dust. He has never had this experience before. He just doesn't know what's happening. But covered in dust, she runs to the bathroom, she opens the tap, she puts Chippy under the tap. And now poor Chippy is shivering. Yeah, and she then did what any owner would do. No, she didn't put him in the microwave. But she got the hairdryer and she blew hot water on Chippy. A newspaper heard about Chippy's experience and wanted to interview the owner about Chippy. And the owner said, "Chippy doesn't sing anymore. He just sits and stares." Yeah, well, it's not difficult to see why, is it? You know, sucked in, washed up, blown over. Can any of you relate to Chippy? Some of you are tired, you are tense, you are troubled. Complete the following sentences. I am ready to throw in the towel. I am falling apart. I am at my wits' end. I feel like resigning from the human race. How do we recharge our emotions? Quietness. There is so much noise pollution. The psalmist, Psalm 23, he leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. The Sabbath is a time when we step back to enjoy nature rather than figuring out how to change it. And it is only as we cease our restless doing that we will discover what needs to be done. Family, friends, the original Department of Health and Welfare. The most important things in life are not things, but people. And we need to spend time with our family and with our friends. It is not enough to grab a few minutes here or there. Family and friends are God's institution. Meal times are important gatherings in family life. And we should guard those gatherings against all intrusions. We have less time for meals than we once did. And we don't always have them when we should. We cook the wrong foods or the right foods in the wrong way to save time. We fail to give ourselves time to properly digest what we've eaten. Meals are often sandwiched between other priorities. Meals are grabbed or snatched. There is so much to be said for not answering our mobiles or texting during meal times. Other people can wait. And we need to learn to master the mobile rather than be enslaved to it. You see, technology promised us modern conveniences that would make our lives easier. But the truth is, computers, emails, mobiles have increased the pace of work rather than diminished it. Do you know, I was at a service station and stopped off for a coffee, went to the loo. And we guys, when we go to the loo, right, there's urinals, okay? There's an unspoken rule when you go to the urinals. You don't stand next to somebody, yeah? You just don't do that, you know? There's always, it has to be one empty, you know, I go, it's like, oh, if there isn't one, I'm waiting. I'm not gonna go, I'm not gonna cram in there. But anyway, so I was in here, there was an empty one, and then there was another guy there. Then this guy comes along and he comes into this one. It's like, whoa, straight away. But it wasn't just that. He had his mobile phone like here, and he was like this. He's like that, and he's shouting, "Whoa, yeah, and he's going on like this. And I thought, he's an idiot. He's an idiot. I mean, can he not just say to the person, "I got to go to the loo"? It's a public arena. I've got to go to the loo, I'll call you back. Yeah, like that. So I said, Lord, I've had enough of this. Teach him a lesson. Honestly, this is true. I said, teach him a lesson. And I said it out loud. Teach him a lesson. The moment I said teach him a lesson, his mobile phone fell into the urinal. No, true. My assistant was with me. He couldn't believe it. And the thing was, it fell into the urinal. He was so shocked, he peed all over it. I turned to him, I said, that'll teach you. I said, don't use the mobile phone when you're in here. I said, what's wrong with you? Come on! The word leisure is derived from the Latin word lycia, which means permission. The main reason many people do not have enough leisure is they are not giving themselves enough permission to take the time to enjoy it. Leisure is one of the best stress relievers, and it is strange that people resist it so much. God is just as pleased when we play as when we work. When each is done, to make possible the greater effectiveness of the other. The Sabbath is a day to rest our body. The Sabbath is a day to recharge our emotions. And thirdly, the Sabbath is a day to be renewed spiritually. The Sabbath is a day to be renewed spiritually. Many people are spiritually bankrupt. I was at a dinner and they put me next to this billionaire because they wanted me to kind of talk to him about Jesus. And he was going on to me, he was going on and on and on about how he's done this, he's done that, he's got this, he's got that, he's got this, he's got that. Anyway, at the end of the lunch, he bored me, totally bored me. I said, you might be a financial giant, but you are a spiritual midget. That's what I told him. And I did it, with a bit of accents. You're a little spiritual midget. You might be a financial giant, but you're a spiritual midget. Are you spiritually bankrupt? We have so little time for God. Our lives are so full, and yet they are so empty. We have no room for God in our thoughts, in our schedules, in our lives. But when we keep the Sabbath day holy, we do not rest alone. A holy God joins us. And we read in Psalm 46, verse 10, "Be still and know that I am God." Another translation of that verse is, stop fidgeting. Be still. Be still. Still your heart. Still your mind. Still your body. Worship renews our spirit as sleep renews our body. Sabbath is a time for being in the presence of the holy God and letting God shape our lives. In other words, stop working and let God work in you. Let God work in you. Does God have an opportunity to minister to you? When do you give God the time to do that? If not on the Sabbath, when? Sabbath is a day to tune in to God, a day to get our spiritual focus, a day to enjoy God. We focus not only on our physical needs, our emotional needs, but our spiritual needs. Keep the Sabbath day holy, the Bible says, Isaiah 58. Don't pursue your own interests on that day, but enjoy the Sabbath and speak of it with delight as the Lord's holy day. Isaiah 58, verse 13. Did you notice in the middle of that verse what it says? Don't pursue your own interests on that day. Don't turn a God day into a golf day. Yeah? Yeah, you see, it's about the family. And you sometimes hear about the father or, I'm going to play golf all day because it's the Sabbath. Oh, what's your wife and the kids going to do? It's a holy day. Don't turn a holy day into a golf day. As Isaiah says, don't pursue your own interests. There was a rabbi who absolutely loved playing golf. It was his passion. Anyway, he woke up, it was the Sabbath, the Jewish Sabbath, very early in the morning, and he was going to spend time in prayer and time to prepare for the synagogue. But he thought, the day's beautiful. I've got plenty of time. I can go and do a round of golf, and then I'll get back, shower, get to the synagogue. Nobody's going to know. So he's out there. He's having a great time. He's knocking the balls. The angels go to the Lord, and they say, Lord, 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 look at the rabbi. Look at the rabbi. He goes, yeah, I can see. He's playing golf. It's the Sabbath. He says, yeah, I can see. And the angel said, well, why don't we teach him a lesson? So the Lord said, all right, next hole, the rabbi gets a hole in one. The angel said, I thought we were going to teach him a lesson. The Lord says, well, I have. The angel said, well, what do you mean? The Lord said, well, who can he tell? Look, I'm not anti-leisure. I'm not anti-hobby. What I'm saying is the Sabbath a priority for God and your family first? First. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'm not anti-doing leisure. Give God the first part of the day of every week as a reminder to say, you are first in my life. You see, many people worship their work. They work at their play, and they play at their worship.
Come on now.
A mother said to her son, come on, we're going to go to church. He goes, no, I'm not going today. She goes, why not? He says, because I've seen the religious service on television, so I don't need to go. So she says, okay, later on today, when we all have Sunday lunch, you can watch the McDonald's advert. Unless you are sick, unless you have a disability, you have no excuse not to go to church. Are we taking this commandment seriously? To rest our body, to recharge our emotions, to be renewed spiritually. See, while we like the idea and the appeal of the Sabbath, we resist the reality of actually observing it. But ignoring the Sabbath carries a heavy physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual price tag, and one that increases along with the modern pace of life. And unless we change, there will come a time when it will be too late to do so. Too late because others will have already suffered too much as a result of our obsessive haste. Times will change for the better when we change. Our rest is ultimately found in Jesus Christ. And Jesus said this, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, because I am humble and gentle, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke fits perfectly, and the burden I give you is light." Many of us need to rest first in Jesus before we can rest on the Sabbath. Many of us need to discover peace with Jesus before we can discover peace on the Sabbath. And the good news of Christianity is that the King of Kings, the King of the entire universe, is inviting every one of us into a personal relationship with Jesus. And if we haven't yet discovered that, if you haven't yet discovered that, those of you that are here, those of you that are tuned in, then my first appeal to you is have peace with Christ. Discover that peace by connecting and encountering Jesus. I was not brought up as a Christian. And when I was a student in London and I met a Christian, and in my first year at college, he gave me a Bible. He helped me understand the message of the Bible. And then he showed me one day in the last book of the Bible, in the book of Revelation, it has this beautiful picture of Jesus standing outside of a door of a house knocking. And it says this: if you hear the knock, open the door and I will come in and eat with you. In other words, I'll come in and fellowship with you. And I did that. I opened the door on the 9th of February, 1975, and I invited Jesus to come into my life. And I experienced his cleansing. I experienced freedom. I experienced his presence, his peace in my life. And I became his child. And I've been at peace with Jesus since that day. I have peace with Jesus. I know Jesus. I know his presence, his peace, his power. And so I can have peace about anything he tells me to do. The first invitation is to know Jesus. If you don't know Jesus, open that door and let him in. St. Augustine wrote this: our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you. Our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you.